The Minnesota Timberwolves in Game 1 did not only have a bad, unlucky shooting night, the Thunder forced them to have a bad shooting night. They put them in uncomfortable situations all night, especially the second half. And ultimately, OKC would come out the other side the victors of Game 1. Let's break it down. Now, it's really important to note that I think Game 1 is one of the most crucial games to win in any given playoff series. Because within that postseason atmosphere, on that postseason stage, that's really your first impression of each other. Because yes, you're going to play in the regular season, and yes, you get to watch tape of the other guys when you're prepping for the postseason series. But you can come up with a game plan, and you can build upon what you did in the regular season, but in the playoffs, it's entirely different once you step onto that court. And you have to make adjustments, and you have to understand what's working and what's not, and be able to adapt and improvise very, very quickly in order to secure any kind of victory. And so when you were able to go out and win in game one, that can really set the tone for an entire series because now the Thunder, they know what works. They have proven, hey, we know how to beat the Timberwolves. But for Minnesota, there is still a little bit of a glass ceiling there, and they still have to prove that they can beat the Thunder and get a little bit of momentum rolling. Now they're down in a hole that they've dug for themselves. And I think this especially shows, talking about adjustments, when you look at the first half compared to the second half, because in that first half, Minnesota was doing a lot of things right. Now, even at that moment when the half had wrapped up, you could tell that their efficiency was not where you would like it to be, but you could live with it. Anthony Edwards was, I believe, 3 for 7. And the notable thing, not a lot of guys were having a great first half for Minnesota, but the one guy who was holding them all together, was Julius Randle. He had 20 points by the end of the first half. And if he was able to maintain that momentum, it didn't matter if Minnesota, they came out the second half and everyone played Naz Reid, Donte Divencenzo, Nickeil-Alexander Walker. They had all very inefficient games. If they had inefficient games, but Julius Randle continued that momentum, it would have been all right based off the way that first half went. The offense was running through Randle, and they were not necessarily thriving, but he was keeping them afloat. He was keeping them in the lead. He was the only reason that the Timberwolves were up at any point in this game. But then the second half rolls around, and the OKC Thunder, they make a lot of adjustments, and they make the Timberwolves' life a lot more difficult, especially for Randle, because now they're forcing other guys to go out there and prove their worth for Minnesota. And this night, they were not doing that. As I stated, Naz Reid, Nickeil-Alexander Walker, Donte Divencenzo, these guys who are supposed to be really, really vital role players for Minnesota, and ones that you really have to, for the success of the team, to really be asking to continually hit their shots, they were not doing that. And OKC, they ended up winning this game pretty thoroughly. By the end of it, obviously, if it's a close game, you're gonna have your starters out there. No, both teams were running their deeper reserve units. And that kind of symbolized the collapse that Minnesota had in the second half, to the point where you were leading. It was a tight game in the first half, but you were leading, and by the end of it, you've pretty much all but given up. There's no shot of you winning. And it all comes down to that second half for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Hey, shout out to Alex Caruso. This is someone especially who was really tasked with making the Minnesota Timberwolves and Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards really think about every single thing that they are doing, and he made it work. You try to set a screen against him, he was able to very quickly get himself in front of the screen, so you cannot create space for the offensive creator. Instead, Alex Caruso was getting right through it, and when that happens, that can really play on your mind a little bit. Because setting a screen is not necessarily nuanced. There's not a lot that goes into it. You know, you put a big body out there, and that's supposed to make space for the offensive creator, and then someone's going to roll. And it's very, very simple, but it is effective a lot of the time. And even if it is effective for just a split second, that gives you the opportunity to take a quick first step and get the lead on your opposing defender. But when Alex Caruso is really unfazed by screens, that makes it really uncomfortable for you. You don't get that quick first step at all, and the screen is rendered entirely ineffective, and you can't create that space. And especially when someone like Caruso is able to get past that screen, he is a very, very smart defender. You look at OKC's past series against Denver, and Alex Caruso was able to give even Nikola Jokic some trouble. And that's talking about a center versus a backcourt player. When you talk about guys that can guard 1 through 5, typically your mind might go to a small forward, like a Tatum or something. But Alex Caruso, when he is on, is up there with the best of them. One of the best role players, if not the best in the league for my money. Because what he does for you on the defensive end, I don't know if that can be replicated by any other player in the league. Yes, you've got your rim protectors. Yes, you have your versatile, switchable defenders. Yes, you might have your tone setters on the perimeter like a Drew Holiday, even a Dennis Schroeder. But Alex Caruso, he is active on every single play. And when you have him on the court, you can put him on just about anyone. And he is going to more than hold his own on the defensive end. He is going to excel in whatever you ask him to do defensively. And then on offense, in this game, drawing into the late stages where by this point Oklahoma City was leading, Caruso hit some threes, and that feels like it really, really seals it. And for the Timberwolves, of course, they did not have a very efficient night, to say the absolute least. And sometimes when that happens, you can say that a team, they beat themselves, right? Oh, maybe the shots just weren't falling. Maybe they were getting open looks, but they just didn't connect that night. And that's okay because you got something to build upon and you can continue to create those open looks. Eventually, they're going to be falling. But for Minnesota, they did not have an off night because they were unlucky at shooting the ball. Instead, Oklahoma City, they made it an off night, like with Alex Caruso. And for the Timberwolves, they shot a lot of threes this game. And on the opposite end, they didn't really make a lot of those. So, on one hand, at first glance, you could look at that and say that they did beat themselves. However, the reason they were taking so many threes was because they were continually made uncomfortable by the OKC Thunder defense. And so they had to settle for a lot of shots, especially the likes of Divencenzo, and it really didn't work out. Even in that second half, where Julius Randle had a great start to the game, come that second half, even he had kind of been figured out by this Thunder defense. And so all of this to say, you can talk about the offense of both these teams for a long time. Whether it is Anthony Edwards, a rising superstar in the league, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who just won the MVP as I am recording this. But this series has the potential to be a defensive battle. The Timberwolves, when they are at their peak, they can have a very, very physical, intense defense. They are like a pack of wolves in a sense. Very befitting of their name in the way that they're able to hound you and make you uncomfortable. But on the other end, that's precisely what the Thunder did tonight or last night. And getting into how the Thunder they executed on offense, though, because of course their defense was outstanding, as we have stated, and that really forced Minnesota to have a very, very rough night offensively. But as good as you may perform on defense, you also have to be able to execute on offense to truly succeed. And for the Thunder, the thing that really stands out to me about their offense is the fact that, yes, of course, they can have pretty nights sometimes. SGA, an incredible scorer. J Dub, he's an all star this year. Chet Holmgren's always in the mix. Isaiah Joe, a great shooter. But the thing that stands out to me about the Thunder, especially as we saw in this past game, was when things aren't so pretty. When the Thunder may not be having the most efficient night as well, especially for guys like SGA or J Dub, these primary scoring options who you would very much so like to be efficient. When they're having an off night, OKC, they still manage to be effective. As I said earlier, Alex Caruso hit some threes in this game that really felt like it was a wrap for Minnesota by that point. But even with their primary leading scorers in SGA and J-Dub throughout this season, they have been models of efficiency. This game, they were not. But the thing that separates a good player from a great player is a good player, say especially if their game is predicated on scoring. If they have an off night, maybe there's not a lot of other contributions that they can make to really help their team. But for the Thunder, both Shai and J-Dub, they showed up in other ways. For Shai, the now MVP of the league, this was someone who, of course, there were conversations of the whole free throw merchant thing. And the thing about that is, yes, he gets quite a bit of calls. However, there is a lot of driving that goes into his game. And when you are constantly going at the defense, you're going to pick up fouls. And a counter argument to that might say Anthony Edwards drives quite a bit too. However, Ant consistently tries to push through contact. And I'm a Minnesota fan. When that works, it's very, very fun to watch. However, with SGA, what he does instead is he kind of creates that contact. There's a little bit of a mix here where he doesn't shy away from it, but he also is not like Ant and constantly driving through it. Instead, he's somewhere in the middle, and what he does is he doesn't necessarily go at the defense, but he attacks their weaknesses in the sense of understanding positioning very, very well and determining the way that he can kind of manipulate his body and his movements in a way that is going to create contact and draw the foul. And yes, there can be criticisms of that, but in a game like tonight, you really saw his effectiveness in doing so. He didn't have a great night, but he ended up with 31 points. And that was because of his ability to get to the line. And you don't have to like it, I understand. I'm not the biggest fan necessarily either, but it is smart the way that he plays. And what it means when you're able to get to the line so consistently, even if you're having a off night shooting the ball, you're going to get some points up because of your ability to get to the line. Because once you get there, that's just a wide open shot. And there's probably no one better in the league at doing that than SGA. Then for Jalen Williams, he also didn't have the Christmas night at shooting the ball, but he was also vital for Thunder in spite of that. You look at his offensive production: 19 points, 8 boards, 5 assists. So he was doing more than just scoring. He was getting quite a few rebounds and also showing off some of his playmaking chops. I believe he had a lob to Chet Holmgren at one point in this game, and it was a really nice assist from J-Dub. But on the defensive end, especially, is where he really exceeded and excelled in this game because he had 5 steals. And Minnesota had quite a few turnovers this game. J-Dub was a big factor in why. So you look at the Thunder team, they executed on all fronts, and it wasn't pretty at times. But guys like SGA, guys like J-Dub, they have an ability to impact the game, even if they aren't having the most efficient night. In that defense, man, it's going to make life trouble for Minnesota. And if OKC ends up going to the finals here, it's going to make life trouble for either the Knicks or the Pacers as well. There's not really an answer to it when you've got the likes of an Alex Caruso always roaming around and making even guys with a major size advantage very, very uncomfortable, forcing them into bad looks. OKC played really well last night. And for Minnesota, this is a series that you can still win, but there are going to have to be some adjustments that are made. They played pretty sloppy at times, and a lot of that was forced by the Thunder. But when it's forced by the other team, that means that there are ways that you can kind of try to combat that and be better and minimize turnovers as well as your fouls. And part of that's always going to happen with guys like SGA, the way he's able to manipulate his body, his movements to force contact. But there are adjustments that can be made, and this is a series that is winnable for both teams. However, Oklahoma City Thunder, they came out and they made a statement in game one. And when the Thunder are executing on all fronts, it's going to be very, very difficult for anyone to be able to take them out. What a game they had to set the tone. And this is going to be a fun series. For a team with so much youth in the Thunder, in a manner in which one at first glance could say that they're a couple years away and they don't yet have the experience to perform at the highest level, the Thunder, they keep outrunning that timeline.